are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, March 28th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. And I apologize because I didn't fix the segment title here on the graphics page, so that's my bad. But yeah, so let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about what the Bengals executive vice president had to say about Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins and their new deals, or possible new deals. So we'll get into that. We'll also talk about Steelers ownership, Art Rooney II, talking about their offseason and what to expect for them in the coming season. Then we will get into talking about the 49ers gearing up for a Brock Purdy payday and what that can mean for them. And then we'll also get into, to conclude the show, talk about the Giants head coach Brian Daboll talking about possibly taking back play calling duties. So with that being said, let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Bengals and some of the things that they are going to have to address in the near future. So let's get into that. So the Bengals obviously have two wide receivers here that, one of them actually could end up getting traded. The other, they're looking to pay. The one thing that I was reading about was the fact that they might be waiting on, so they prefer to watch the market, looking at Justin Jefferson and seeing what he's going to end up getting paid. They're going to see what he ends up getting before they start negotiating with Ja'Marr Chase. They also need to consider whether they're going to end up extending T. Higgins as well. They got to work on the salary cap, but yeah. So really, the main reason why they haven't started, talking about a new deal or discussing a new deal with Ja'Marr Chase is because they want to see what Justin Jefferson ends up getting. The Bengals can exercise Chase's fifth-year option, securing his services through 2025. Obviously, T. Higgins has been franchise tagged. They just finished their working on Joe Burrow's new deal, so he's set. It's just the receivers you got to worry about now. And obviously, T. Higgins, earlier in the offseason, he did request a trade, so we'll see if that ends up happening. But the Bengals, I think, at least are going to try to work something out with him before they have to cut ties with him and have to possibly trade him. But the one thing that was talked about, at least in the article that I was looking at, is that Katie Blackburn, which is the EVP, she was asked about the the negotiations with Chase and T. Higgins, all that stuff. She said, "We haven't started. That's sort of the new thing, is just to piece together some of those things to consider and give it some thought. And like I said, I can't say for sure where any of it will go, but we certainly are going to study on it and see what we can figure out to try to get the best result we can for the club one way or another." She also said, "We like these guys. We have to work within the salary cap, so we have to figure out what we what that will mean and how it can all stay together. That's just what we have to work on and see where it takes us. But she also said for Bengals fans to remain patient throughout this whole process. But yeah, I mean, they got some big decisions that they have to make because, I mean, these are your top 2 wide receivers, and Tyler Boyd is still a free agent. So I don't know if the Bengals are going to end up bringing him back, but I think, the Bengals are going to do the best they can to try to, keep both guys. I mean, Jamar Chase, I think, is definitely going to get his new deal. I think what's probably going to end up happening, and this might happen with some other wide receivers as well, like Brandon Ayuk, for example, where you're prioritizing paying other players, which is going to have to lead you to, getting rid of some players. And if they're not able to agree on a new contract with T. Higgins, he's probably going to end up being traded. And I think the Bengals, will be fine, although they're going to take a hit because T. Higgins is a talented wide receiver, and he's been productive for them ever since they drafted him. But I think for me, it seems like they are going to prioritize making sure that Jamar Chase is still with this team. And I think, unfortunately for T. Higgins, he's going to be the odd man out. But that you see that all over the place. I mean, you're not going to be able to keep everybody. And how many times have I said this? They're not going to be able to keep, everyone. And look at what they did with Joe Mixon. They had to, cut ties with him. You bring in Zach Moss on a cheap deal, who had a productive season last year with the Colts. You cut ties with Mixon. They can't keep everybody. And they let Tyler Boyd go. And Tyler Boyd is still not on a team yet. I'm curious to see where he ends up. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this all unfolds. I mean, the Bengals are going to pay Jamar Chase, but I think T. Higgins is probably going to end up being the odd man out. But, yeah, I mean, basically, like in the article, negotiations are expected to take time, and they want fans of the Bengals to be patient, that this is all going to work itself out. But this is a big year coming up for the Bengals. And Joe Burrow's rehab I saw was going well. I believe it's something that Zach Taylor said, their head coach. Everything's going well with that. So, yeah, it's a big year for them. They're looking to bounce back, get themselves back into the postseason after not making it in 2023. But that was, basically due to the fact that Burrow got hurt. And that kind of I mean, Jake Browning gave them a shot, but again, it was never really a lock that they were going to get in. Again, because of how competitive the AFC is, it was going to be very tough for the Bengals to make it. And Jake Browning, give him credit, played well, but a couple of games, I mean, they lost to the Steelers in Pittsburgh and losing to Kansas City. They had a 10-point lead against the Chiefs, but they couldn't hold on to that. So, they fell a little bit short, but, they'll be back in 2024. If they're healthy, if they got a healthy squad, they're going to be one of the top teams in the AFC. And that has a lot to do with Joe Burrow's health. If he's healthy, yeah, they're going to be right there. And they're going to be one of those teams that's going to try to dethrone the Chiefs that I think has the best chance to do so because they've already done it. But yeah, I mean, I talked about how they brought in Zach Moss. They also, added Mike Gesicki, the tight end. So I mean, we got to keep an eye on what they end up doing with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. But like I said, I think Jamar Chase ultimately he's going to get his money. I think T. Higgins is going to get his money, but it might be elsewhere. Now, where's that going to be? I don't know. I mean, how many times do I say I would love for, one of my teams to get him? But somebody's going to pay him. It just might not be the Bengals. And it's going to be interesting to see if he does get traded before the 2024 season because, they franchise tagged him. He requested a trade, but nothing has happened yet. I mean, maybe there's a scenario where it happens on draft night because we've seen, A.J. Brown get traded on draft night. We've seen, I think Marquise Brown also was traded on draft night as well. So it has happened. So maybe there's another scenario where that also happens. Maybe, the Bengals, they, trade with someone and they trade up to get a receiver. Maybe. I don't know. Again, that's just a hypothetical, but I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. But because if the Bengals don't trade him and he's still under the franchise tag, is there a scenario where he holds out and doesn't play? And then that has to force the Bengals' hand to look for a trade and trade him. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's a business. And, I'm not T. Higgins, but, the Bengals, I think you're in one of the best situations in the NFL. You're playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. You're part of a great wide receiver duo. You're in a great situation. And, maybe you don't have a say in where you end up getting traded. So I'd want to stay with the Bengals. But again, if the Bengals don't give you the contract that you want, then yeah, you have the right to want to be traded, and that's what he did, requested to be traded. But I don't know. I feel like this is a great situation for you. You should want to stay here, but I don't know. We'll see. Again, if the Bengals give him a contract that's just not worth it, then yeah, it makes sense on his end, but also yeah, it seems like for me they are prioritizing paying Jamar Chase, and yeah, that probably has to rub T. Higgins the wrong way, but again, it's a business, so like I said, I think eventually it's gonna end up being him traded somewhere else, going somewhere else, and getting paid elsewhere. But only time will tell. Only time will tell. And if that ends up happening, that's a big loss for the Bengals. It just is. It's not going to be easy to replace. He's been a very productive wide receiver for them. And, they had a great trio of wide receivers, but two of those three might not be on the team next season. It's going to be Jamar Chase, and other guys are going to have to step up. Now, Tyler Boyd is still out there. I keep saying that. If they end up trading T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd is still a free agent, then maybe they reach out to Boyd and say, hey, do you want to come back on a home discount? See what he says. Again, he's probably looking to get paid as well, even though he's still out there. Nobody has signed him yet. So, but like I said, only time will tell. Only time will tell. So, but like I said, Joe Burrow, his rehab is going well. So that's the other thing too. You got to make sure Burrow is healthy. Because if he's not, then the Bengals Super Bowl aspirations don't exist, really. Again, Jake Browning played well for them, but if you're going into the season with Jake Browning starting and Burrow's not healthy again, yeah, then and all the stuff with them dethroning the Chiefs, that goes out the window as well. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it when talking about this topic. When we come back from our first break of the show, we'll talk about another team in the AFC North, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, let me know what you guys think about what we just talked about in the comments with the T. Higgins, Jamar Chase stuff. Does Jamar Chase get his deal? Does really, the real question I actually wanted to ask is, does T. Higgins end up getting his money elsewhere? And does he indeed get traded? Let me know. Because, again, that's something to keep an eye on, in the coming months. We'll see if that ends up happening, if he ends up getting traded somewhere else. But we'll see. So, like I said, when we come back from our first break of the show, we'll talk about, like I said, another AFC North team. We'll talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll talk about Art Rooney II, his comments on the Steelers offseason, and what to expect from this team next season. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit, I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant, I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we'll talk about Art Rooney II's comments on the Steelers offseason. So he was asked at the annual league meeting about the offseason, and this is what he said about the changes that the Steelers have made this offseason, particularly at quarterback. So this is via the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. He said, every year we try to figure out how we get better, and how do we get better as quickly as possible. I think that's the bottom line, try to get better as quickly as possible. He also said, I like where we are so far. The draft is the next priority. We have to do good with the draft. All right, so pretty short. I thought there was another quote in the article here that I have. But, yeah, because what the Steelers did this offseason was, a lot of people say, is un-Steeler-like. Because they pulled the plug on Kenny Pickett. They went out, they signed Russell Wilson, and then they traded for Justin Fields. And you know, between that and you go back to, you know, Ben Roethlisberger retiring and, you know, all the stuff with Matt Canada, the Steelers are not the organization where they just will fire people or they will get rid of people. They kind of keep people, and those people, those players, those coaches, they kind of overstay their welcome. Now, Ben Roethlisberger is a Hall of Famer. There's no question about it. But, you know, the last couple of seasons of Big Ben, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. And now the Steelers did end up making the playoffs, but they didn't win a playoff game. You know, in 2020, the Browns, you know, were up 28-0 in the first quarter. And then you had them go up against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, and that game really wasn't. I mean, the Steelers were winning that game at one point because of, you know, the Chiefs lollygagging, and TJ Watt scored a touchdown, and that put the Steelers up 7-0. And you thought, oh wow, maybe the Chiefs ended up winning that game, which we all figured. The Steelers haven't won a playoff game since 2016, and oddly enough, that was in Arrowhead, but that was when Alex Smith was the quarterback and Chris Boswell kicked 6 field goals. But yeah, Ben Roethlisberger was not great the last couple of seasons. You saw the decline was there, but the Steelers, they wanted, you know, to at least, you know, put together one more run with Big Ben, but it just wasn't going to happen. So they did eventually say, all right, we want to go in a different direction. And it was a couple of years too late, a lot of Steelers fans would say. But that ended up happening. But then you got the stuff with Matt Canada. And Steelers fans just were begging the Steelers to let go of him. And eventually they did do that. But it just took a long time for them to finally do it. And eventually they did. But they really did pull the plug on Kenny Pickett. They pulled it very fast. And I didn't expect it. I thought that you were going to have him, Mason Rudolph, compete to be the starters next season, and another veteran quarterback was going to come in. And they did sign Russell Wilson, but then it just things just unraveled there, and you know, Kenny Pickett, you know, wanted out, and they ended up trading him to Philadelphia, where he's going to be a backup, and that might be what he ends up being for the rest of his career. But we'll see. But what the Steelers did, like I said, was un-Steeler-like. They made changes. They bring in Russell Wilson on a cheap deal, and then they get Justin Fields for basically nothing. I mean, at most it's going to be a 4th-round pick. So the quarterback room is very different. Then they go out and they sign Patrick Queen to add to the linebacker core. I mean, I like what the Steelers did this offseason. They're not spending a ton of money on a veteran quarterback. They traded for Justin Fields. And again, at most it's going to be a 4th-round pick. I like what they did. And they're probably going to end up going receiver in the draft. I was reading that that's probably what they're going to end up doing because they did trade Deontay Johnson. I mean, you're going to have to replace him. I mean, they did bring in Van Jefferson, but you want to... I mean, Van Jefferson is not, a star wide receiver by any means. I mean, it's for depth. So they're going to end up drafting a receiver. And you got a nice 1-2 duo with Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. So, and you got George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth. I listen, the Steelers got playmakers on both sides of the ball. And then, of course, you got the quarterback on the defense, TJ Watt. I mean, the Steelers' defense is going to be good. But, yeah, the quarterback room is different. What the Steelers did this offseason was different. And, again, I think they're going to be a team that's going to be in the thick of it. Now, in the grand scheme of things, what can the Steelers do? Well, I think they could definitely make the playoffs. Now, can they win a playoff game is the question. Because, again, like I said, the last time they won a playoff game was in Arrowhead, and it was the year before Patrick Mahomes was drafted. Well, I mean, the playoff game took place in 2017, but you get what I mean. That was the last time they won a playoff game. It has been a long time. And this is a big year for them. And I get it. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season, and I don't expect that. Even in this loaded division that the Steelers play in, I don't expect them to finish with a losing record because it just doesn't happen. But I think we've gotten to a point where we praise Mike Tomlin for the great job that he's done. Like, they made the playoffs with Mason Rudolph. They were able to right the ship and win their last 3, make it to the playoffs. And, yeah, they lost by, a couple scores to the Bills. But at one point, it was a 1-score game. They were competitive in that game. Look, they were able to backdoor into the playoffs in 2021 with Big Ben, his final season, when it looked like it wasn't going to happen. Like, we're praising Mike Tomlin. Like, you finished 9-8 after they started off 3-6 or 3-7, whatever their record was when Kenny Pickett took over as the starter. Like, we praise Mike Tomlin for the job that he's done, and yeah, rightfully so. But at some point, we also got to say, you got to win some playoff games. It's been a while. It has been a long time. And the Steelers, they have to do that in 2024. Now, again, I look at this team, if everything goes right, if Russ has another 26 touchdowns to 8 interception season, then, yeah, the Steelers, they could probably get to the playoffs and at least win a playoff game. At least one playoff game. Get to the second round. But I don't know. It's just you playing a gauntlet of a division, a gauntlet of a conference. It's just so tough. Again, got to see the Bengals healthy. Said that in the last segment. The Browns, listen, they brought in Tyler Huntley. They still have DTR. Deshaun Watson's coming back. I mean, we'll see what ends up. We got to see if Deshaun Watson's healthy. That's the main thing, and I saw something that said Nick Chubb is going to start ramping up as well. So hopefully he's back by week 1. And we'll see if the Browns end up playing in Brazil, because it's a possibility. It's coming down to supposedly either them or the Packers. So, yeah, you got that division. And again, the Ravens, they bring in Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson was relatively healthy last year. So, we'll see what happens there, if they could repeat that. And then again, you got everybody else. The AFC South is more competitive. The AFC East, you got the Bills, you got the Dolphins, and we'll see if with the healthy Rodgers and the moves they made, are the Jets going to be the team that we thought they were going to be in 2023 with the healthy Rodgers? And then you got the Chiefs out in the AFC West, who are in a tier of their own. It's just, there's so many teams. It's going to be, they're going to be duking it out for those wild card spots. A lot of teams. And the Steelers, listen, they found a way to make it in. And that was with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. Now you got Russell Wilson. Now you got Justin Fields. I mean, again, is Justin Fields great? Well, he hasn't really shown that. He's shown that he's a great playmaker with his legs, but in terms of a thrower, a passer, that's something that needs to be worked on. And Russell Wilson has not been the same player since he left Seattle. But I think with the Steelers and how they just have been able to find a way to get in, I think with these two guys, they should find a way in, or at least get close. But like I said, I think you have to get into the playoffs, and I think you have to win a playoff game. Because at some point, you might have to. I mean, I thought it was going to be this year or last year at one point because they lost to the Patriots and the Cardinals. How long is Mike Tomlin going to be the Steelers head coach without winning a playoff game? Again, he does a great job. I don't know how the Steelers do it, but they somehow find a way to finish with a winning record. They finished. What did they finish in 2019? 8-8. With the quarterbacks that they had at the time, Mason Rudolph again, and also Devlin Hodges. Those are your quarterbacks that year. And let me see. What did the Steelers finish with in 2019? It was either 8-8 or 9-7. But that's what I mean, though. It's just like you sit there and you go, how are the Steelers able to do this? But so they did finish 8-8. At one point, it was like, wow, they might make the playoffs with, Devlin Hodges, but Duck Hodges, people called him. I got my dad a Duck Dodgers T-shirt, and it was a duck with Steelers logos and thing, like a Steelers headband or something. Because that was the quarterback at the time, Duck Hodges. But yeah, it's just if the Steelers are able to do that, I think they're going to find a way with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. But Russell Wilson right now is going to be the starter. Now, if he struggles, well, then Fields is going to be the next man up. So, and I think this will be good for Fields. He can kind of just sit behind Russ, get his mind right, learn the playbook, and then we'll see if the Steelers end up bringing him back. I think Fields is going to see some playing time, one way or another, but we'll see. But yeah, what the Steelers did this offseason, I think they had a good offseason. The other thing too is TJ Watt's got to be healthy, because we see what happens when he gets hurt and he's not on the field. The Steelers' defense is just completely different. So, but we'll see what happens. The AFC North is the best division in the NFL. I think most people will agree with that. They're going to be beating each other up in 2024, and I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be a lot of fun. That division is, like I said, the best division in football. But like I said, I think it's really important that the Steelers got to make the playoffs and you got to win a playoff game. Show that you can do that because, again, we praise Mike Tomlin. He does a great job. Somehow they find a way into the playoffs, but they can't do anything after that. And again, Russell Wilson is not the same player that he was in Seattle. If you were getting that, Russ, well, the Steelers are up there with the best teams in the AFC. Right now, I can't say that because we haven't seen that side of Russ. And I don't think we ever are going to see that again. So, but let me know what you guys think about the Steelers' offseason moves. How do you feel about them? Where do you see the Steelers amongst the teams in the AFC? Do you think the Steelers will make the playoffs in 2024? So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we're going to talk about Brock Purdy and the future payday for him and how that will impact the 49ers. So that is what we'll talk about when we come back from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about a Brock Purdy payday coming in the near future or at least in the future, somewhat future for the 49ers. So, obviously, with Brock Purdy being on the deal that he's on right now, currently his rookie deal, so he accounts for $1.004 million against the 49ers salary cap, which is considerably lower than lower than not any other quarterback, but lower than other quarterbacks in the league, including backups on the 49ers roster. And what's great about that right now is the fact that gives the 49ers flexibility, to add to their roster, to pay guys. We talked about Brandon Ayuk a lot and how that hasn't happened yet, but it gives them flexibility. But at some point, they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy if he's going to end up being the guy. And so CEO Jed York acknowledged that when Purdy becomes eligible for an extension next year, his salary, it will significantly increase. York expects Purdy to ask for a contract surpassing $40 million annually, considering the current market for top quarterbacks. The 49ers have a history of paying top dollar for quarterbacks, as seen with Jimmy Garoppolo's contract in 2018. York emphasizes the importance of the quarterback position and doesn't shy away from paying quarterbacks well. York trusts the team's management, including John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and others, to handle contract negotiations. The 49ers have benefited from having a low-cost quarterback, allowing them to allocate resources to other areas of the roster, like I talked about before. The impending increase in Purdy's salary may make it challenging for the 49ers to retain top talent. So, yeah, that's where this could be a problem, because you got Brandon Ayuk, who's looking to get paid, and some of the other guys. I mean, not at the moment, but, you have Christian McCaffrey, you have George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. You're not going to be able to keep everybody. Again, how many times am I going to say that? And already it seems like, Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers, I mean, based off of his social media post, there's a little bit of some friction there, at least. But I'm not going to go crazy over it until something happens where it's either Ayuk gets a new deal or the 49ers just straight up trade him somewhere else and he gets paid elsewhere, which also could happen to T. Higgins, like I said before. Yeah, I mean, Brock Purdy, if he's the guy, the 49ers are gonna pay him. And this is what could be troubling, because the criticism that Brock Purdy has gotten, when people on social media are saying, his Avengers, his Avengers staff, his Avengers squad, listen, you might lose some of those Avengers if you end up getting paid. And again, you go back to when the 49ers were struggling and Trent Williams got hurt and Deebo Samuel got hurt. The 49ers were a different team and Brock Purdy was turning the ball over. It didn't look great. And that's when all the Brock Purdy critiques came out, and saying, he's a system quarterback, and he's a different quarterback when he doesn't have all his guys. And I mean, again, it's hard to argue against it because, I still think, because, it happened. But, I think Brock Purdy is still a solid quarterback. I mean, again, they picked him with the last pick in the draft. And look at what he was able to do. And I said this. Now, again, I think the guys around him elevate Brock Purdy himself. But I think with Brock Purdy as the quarterback, I think he's playing the position better than any 49ers quarterback that they've had in this regime, in this era. Now, I'm not talking about all time. Not all time. I'm talking about just with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch taking over. Okay, I'm not comparing him to Steve Young and Joe Montana. That's different. I'm talking about right now. I think he's better. I think he's better than Garoppolo. Obviously, the first couple of seasons where you had C.J. Beathard and Nick Mullins, all those guys, like Brock Purdy here, and we never really got to see what Trey Lance could do either. But Brock Purdy has played the position better than any 49ers quarterback in this era. So I think that has to count for something. And again, Garoppolo, brought them to a couple of NFC championship games, and they went to a Super Bowl with him. Garoppolo was solid at one point, but I just feel like with Purdy, things are different. Now, you could also argue, well, Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have Christian McCaffrey, which is a great point. I mean, he did for a little bit, and then he broke his foot, and then Purdy came in, and we know the rest of the story. So you could also look at that too and say, well, Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have McCaffrey. You could say Christian McCaffrey has elevated this offense. Absolutely he has. So there's also that too. But I don't know. I still think Purdy has, done a great job. I think, he's better than Garoppolo was. But, yeah, I mean, it also does help when you have Christian McCaffrey. But again, now if he ends up getting paid and you start losing some guys on offense, well, the pressure is really going to be on Brock Purdy to go out and perform. Because, again, you go back to that losing streak, the interceptions against the Vikings as well during that losing streak. It just, he didn't play great. And look at how he played against the Lions and against the Packers. I mean, it wasn't great for a bit. I mean, they ended up coming back. But, Purdy, turned the ball over. And, almost had, against the Packers, Darnell Savage could have had another pick six. I mean, he dropped it. Purdy was putting the ball in harm's way. It just, it didn't affect the Niners. They were able to overcome adversity, win those games, make it to the Super Bowl. And you know what? I thought he played well in the Super Bowl. I don't care what anybody says. I thought he played well. I think that, he has a little bit more time on some of his throws. I think it's a different game. I mean, again, you go to overtime and, miscommunication on the offensive line. Ayuk's wide open in the end zone. If Purdy's able to have enough time and get the ball to him, well, then the Chiefs are going down the field. And if they get that touchdown, they're going for two, and that's going to be the game right there. So, but I thought Purdy played well in the Super Bowl. And again, it helps when you have Christian McCaffrey. But yeah, not just on offense though, but this could also impact the players you're trying to keep on defense too. Because you got Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and Dre Greenlaw. I mean, they had to cut ties with Eric Armstead on the defensive line. I mean, that's going to hurt a little bit. Like I said, you can't keep everybody. And also, I talk about the Steelers, this being a big year for them. Well, now again, I don't expect the Steelers to make it to the Super Bowl. The Niners, they're a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. And they're trying to get back there again and hopefully get it done this time. But again, it's a new year. The NFC is going to be different. Teams are going to be better. I mean, they're lucky they even got to the Super Bowl because, they should have lost to the Lions and they should have lost to the Packers. Those teams played better. But the Niners, again, were able to overcome those deficits, come back, and get to the Super Bowl again. But they couldn't get it done against the Chiefs. That's why it's so important that you have Brock Purdy on his rookie deal right now, making the amount of money that he's making, because like I just told you, it's not a lot. So it's like the veterans minimum basically. They have to get it done now, because if they don't win a championship, well, then Brock Purdy, when it's time for him to get paid and you lose some of your key guys, well, you're not going to be as great of a team as you were. And now it's going to be even harder for you to make it back to a Super Bowl. So, this is a big year for the Niners. And, again, this is already dealing with all the Brandon Ayuk stuff. I mean, if you end up losing Brandon Ayuk before you even pay Brock Purdy, well, that's a big loss there. Now, again, it hasn't happened yet. But, Brandon Ayuk has really become a good player for them. And losing him, that would really hurt. And he has a good connection with Brock Purdy. So we'll see. I mean, listen, they got Juwan Jennings had a good Super Bowl. Who's not a star wide receiver by any means, but again, he's a decent number 3. So he's gonna have to take on a bigger role. I mean, I think the 49ers, they're another well-run organization that they'll figure it out, but it's just going to be hard. And when you got Brock Purdy, on the doorsteps of, another contract, I mean, again, it's going to be tough to keep everybody if they do indeed give him a big contract. So, I mean, I think got to see how 2024 goes, because if he takes a step back, well, maybe the 49ers say, maybe we got to go look elsewhere for a quarterback. And you know what? That you could argue that that's kind of what they were missing. I mean, I know I said Brock Purdy played well in the Super Bowl, but I also have said that I think the difference between the 49ers winning and losing the Super Bowl is, Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes right now is the standard. The 49ers, listen, Brock Purdy has been a solid quarterback. He was an MVP candidate for a while in 2023, but Brock Purdy's not Patrick Mahomes. Brock Purdy is not this generational talent. Brock Purdy does have talent, but does not stack up with Patrick Mahomes. If the 49ers had a Patrick Mahomes-like quarterback, they probably win the Super Bowl. So I could say that, but also say, hey, Brock Purdy did play well in the Super Bowl. He's not the reason they lost that game. I went over 1,000,000 times why the 49ers lost. Not because of him. But that was the difference. And we'll see again how he performs in 2024. But again, got to keep an eye on Brandon Ayuk. Is he going to be on the team next year, or is he going to be another guy that's like T. Higgins, going to get traded, go elsewhere? Again, if I'm the Giants, trade for both T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk. Trade away all your draft capital, get all that, get those 2 guys. There's your 2 wide receivers. You draft a quarterback. Well, actually, you probably have to give up your first round pick for those guys. But no, again, that's just a desperate Giant fan saying that. But I mean, it'd be nice. But yeah, those 2 guys could possibly end up being traded, T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk. So, but at least for the 49ers, yeah, it's a problem, because then Brock Purdy is losing a player from his Avengers squad. And, the Brock Purdy criticisms will be coming out in full force if they lose Ayuk and then he starts to not play well next season. But, like I said, I think the 49ers are a well-run organization. I think they'll figure it out. It's just, yeah, Brock Purdy payday is gonna dent their wallets a little bit, and it's gonna kind of strap them down. Where, yeah, they're not gonna be able to keep some guys. Like I said, also on defense too. But again, we'll see what happens. So, but let me know what you guys think about all this. How much do you think is Brock Purdy worth? Should the 49ers pay Brock Purdy a big contract, or is he really not the long-term answer? I mean, for me, I think at least at the moment, he's their guy going forward. But I don't know. We'll see. Because things can change. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we're going to talk about, well, actually, we are going to talk about the Giants. We're going to talk about Brian Daboll contemplating taking back play calling duties. So I'll talk about that when we come back from our final break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to talk about my team, the New York Giants. Mainly about head coach Brian Daboll talking about taking back play calling duties. So Daboll is considering taking over play calling duties following the team's offensive struggles in 2023. Daboll acknowledges that many head coaches in the NFL also call plays estimated around 20 or more. He emphasizes that no decision has been made yet, and he's still going through the process of considering what's best for the team. Daboll was hired partly due to his success in Buffalo with their explosive offense. He served as the architect and play caller for 4 seasons. Offensive coordinator Mike Kafka has primarily been responsible for play calling duties with the Giants since he became the offensive coordinator back in 2022. He acknowledges that he has experience in play calling and is evaluating various factors before making a decision. Daboll recognizes the challenges of balancing play calling with other aspects of his job as head coach, but believes he can handle it effectively, citing examples of other successful head coaches who call plays. He reiterates that he will do what he feels is best for the football team. Now, I want to see if I can get the direct quotes from the article that I was looking at for this, and of course it keeps pulling up the Steelers article that I had, so I don't want that. Let's see if it ends up working now. Probably will end up working now. Let's see. Yeah, because I'm on the NFL mobile app. So this is what Daboll said. He said, "It's something I'm looking into." And again, this is at the annual league meeting via the team's official website. "I think there's 20 head coaches at this point in time that call plays in the league, either offensively or defensively. There might be a little bit more. I've been doing a bunch of research, but no decision has been made. I'm still going through that process, thinking about what we could do." He said, I did it for a long time. There's a lot of things that go into it. Part of that evaluation that I talked about, there are some other things that I'm looking into. I take my time and do what I think is best for the team. Still working through the process. There's quite a bit of people nowadays that do that. So again, it's something that I'll look into. Whatever I feel is best for the football team. That's the way we go. Okay. So, yeah, that's what he had to say. And I also wanted to bring up, some of the Giants' offensive stats from 2023. So they averaged 15.6 points per game, which was 30th in the NFL. They were also 31st in passing yards per game with 197.1. 29th in total yards. It just not good. All their stats were not good. In sacks it says 32nd, so it was not good. The offense was just not good last year. How many times am I going to say it? But this is why Daboll was brought in, because where the league's going, most of the head coaches, you look around and they have an offensive background. Now, again, there's some that have a defensive background, and you have an offensive coordinator that you hopefully will, hopefully takes the offense to new heights. But yeah, for the most part, head coach. You look around the league: Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur. These are all offensive guys. That's where everything's. Zach Taylor's an offensive guy, but they're still defensive guys. Mike McDonald's now the head coach for the Raven or for the Seahawks. Dan Quinn with the Commanders. He's got a defensive background. He has been a head coach. That's why they brought in Cliff Kingsbury. Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen. Those are offensive guys. The league is an offensive league. And this is why the Giants brought in Dable. And listen, even in 2022, yeah, the offense, took steps forward and they made the playoffs. But again, I didn't look at the Giants as an elite offense. And they most certainly were not an elite offense in 2023. And I think Dable should be the one to call the plays because they need to do something. Because, I mean, for years now, the offense has been a problem. Again, 2022, they made the playoffs. But again, I still didn't look at them as a great offense. But again, I just, they have not been great. And the Giants really have just not been a team that has been great for years now. There's been a couple of anomaly years. You had 2016, you had 2022, but outside of that, it's been rough. It's been rough. For New York football fans, it has been very rough. And for the moment you thought, okay, the Giants are going to turn it around, the Jets are going to turn it around now getting Aaron Rodgers, but it was kind of more the same thing. 6-11 for the Giants, 7-10 for the Jets. So, and now the Jets, they're in right now on paper, they're in a much better position than the Giants are. But again, on paper, with the Giants, there's a lot of question marks. Quarterback is the big thing. What are they going to do? Now, they keep telling us Daniel Jones is going to be the guy when he comes back. Now, again, that could just be a smokescreen because they could end up, they're going to take a quarterback, I think, one way or another in this draft. And that's going to be the long-term answer. Because, again, you had Rich Eisen saying that he was hearing from people at the Combine, and I think Rich Eisen is a valuable source. Him saying that what he heard at the Combine, the Giants were just done with Daniel Jones. So, Daniel Jones, again, might end up being that bridge guy, and then they hand it off to, hopefully, the franchise quarterback. I think Dable should take over the play calling duties. Again, this is why, like I said, this is why he was brought in to help fix this offense. And listen, last year they took a step back. Now, they were competitive towards the end of the year, and they won some games that they shouldn't have, but they did. And Giant fans will complain that, well, that kind of hurt their draft positioning because maybe they could have got a higher pick and they could have taken one of these top quarterbacks. Now, again, they're probably going to get one of those guys in the second tier now, unless they trade up and give up a lot of assets to, get one of the top guys. Or maybe one of the top guys falls because, I don't know, there's a lot of, it could be J.J. McCarthy being, excuse me, it could be J.J. McCarthy getting drafted by the Commanders. Then, it could be either Jaden Daniels or Drake May. I mean, we'll see. I mean, there could also be a team that trades up with the Cardinals because the Cardinals could be a team that trades down because they, again, keep saying that Kyler Murray is the guy. So, I mean, we know Caleb Williams is going number 1 overall, but now it's like, what's going to happen after that? And if the Giants see a guy that they really like, maybe they potentially do trade up or they let them fall to 6. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I mean, listen, I think Dable should take over the play calling duties. I think that would be the right thing. There has to be some kind of change on the offense. I mean, again, they weren't good offensively. And on top of that, you lost your best offensive player in Saquon Barkley. So, and you were ranked towards the bottom. So now you lose your best offensive player. Well, your offense isn't going to get better. Now, again, it depends on what else they do. I mean, what they do in the draft. And again, I like some of the players on offense. I think Wan'Dale Robinson, he looks like he's going to be a good player for them. Again, we didn't really see what Jalen Hyatt could do because, the Giants really it was just musical chairs at quarterback. It was Daniel Jones, then it was Tyrod Taylor, then it was Tommy DeVito, then Daniel Jones comes back and unfortunately gets hurt, then Tyrod Taylor comes in, Tommy DeVito. It was all over the place. But But that's an area the Giants need to address. They got to get more playmakers. And again, still, I don't think Darren Waller has made an official decision on whether he's going to retire or not. But that could be another player that you end up losing. Now, again, he didn't really play an impact on the team. Had a touchdown, but again, unfortunately, was hurt. So they got to figure it out. And I think Dable taking over the play calling duties, I think that's the right way to go. But again, it's ultimately going to come down to him. And like he said, he's going to make the decision that's best for the team. And hopefully it ends up being him calling the plays. And hopefully the Giants get their guy quarterback. And we go from there. So I think that should be what ends up happening. Because, again, there's got to be some kind of change. I mean, again, you were at the bottom in a lot of offensive categories. You got to do something. Or maybe it's on Mike Kafka, and he ends up being like, oh, well, I mean, he's coming back. So, but there's got to be some kind of change. Now, again, you could also just point to the fact that talent-wise, the Giants just don't have a lot of talent on offense. Other than Saquon Barkley. But now, Saquon Barkley is gone. They brought in Devin Singletary, who, again, had a nice season. Had a nice season with the Texans. And I think he'll be decent. But he's not Saquon Barkley. So, again, there's a lot of areas that the Giants have to improve on offense. Because, I like the direction the defense is going in. Now, I don't like that Wink Martindale is not there anymore. That concerns me a little bit. And like I said, they brought over the defensive coordinator from Tennessee. But again, this defense has a lot of talent. Again, the defensive line, that's something I'm really excited to look for, to watch. Those three guys up front, Thibodeau, Burns, and Dexter Lawrence. That's going to be a lot of fun. And you hope that the Giants finally have a pass rush that can consistently get to the quarterback. Because it's been a long time. I mean, really the last time the Giants had something like that was, again, I don't count 2016. Go back to when they won the Super Bowl with Justin Tuck, with JPP, with Osi Umenyiora. Those guys. That was the last time the Giants had a pass rush. I know they had, again, 2016 they had JPP and they had Olivier Vernon and Damon Snacks Harrison, but I don't know. For me, I go back to the Super Bowl. Those Super Bowl teams. And then you go back even further with Strahan as well. I mean, they got to get back to that. And I think getting Brian Burns to go along with Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence, hopefully this is... We get something similar to the Super Bowl days now with these three guys. But we'll see. We'll see. And again, we still got we still got the draft. There's still moves to be made there. The Giants will address some of those needs. Maybe they take a receiver with that first pick instead of a quarterback. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's just so hard to... Because I feel like they are going to take a quarterback, but what if they end up trading down? They could trade down, they could trade up, they could stay right where they are. It's just, there's so many possibilities. But I don't know, we'll see. But like I said, with this year, I think Dable should take the play calling duties. But again, that's just me. That's just me. So yeah, that's basically it for the show for today. Again, let me know what you guys think about this topic here. Should Dable take over the play calling duties or not? Any other Giant opinions that you may have, leave them in the comments. But yeah, that is pretty much it for me for today. Very excited because it's opening day for baseball. The Yankees will be playing against their arch rivals, even though I've been told before what rivalry. The Houston Astros, a team that has tormented me for years. I'm really excited about it. Baseball season is back, so make sure to tune in to the GSMC Baseball Podcast later get Sam's opinion on things. Also, check out the other shows as well. But yeah, I am really excited for baseball, even though, the Yankees are dealing with some injuries, but I'm not going to let that ruin the season for me. I'm going to go out there and enjoy it. So I'm excited about that. Also, the Sweet 16 for March Madness, that starts tonight. The tournament already started, but I just mean like the Sweet 16, starts tonight. A lot of good games. And this is where everybody's brackets really start to, either fall apart or end up winning your bracket group that you do on ESPN. At least that's what what I'm doing, at least. Many others as well. But yeah, it's again, exciting time to be a sports fan. Really is. But yeah, again, that is pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thanks for tuning in. Again, we'll be back again tomorrow. Full show once again. So make sure to tune in 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I am your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.